Daniel. Chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the kingship of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and proceeded to lay siege to it. In time, Jehovah gave into his hand Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, and a part of the utensils of the house of the true God, so that he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and the utensils he brought to the treasure house of his God. Then the king said to Ashpenaz, his chief court official, to bring some of the sons of Israel, and of the royal offspring, and of the nobles, children in whom there was no defect at all, but good in appearance, and having insight into all wisdom, and being acquainted with knowledge, and having discernment of what is known, in whom also there was ability to stand in the palace of the king, and to teach them the writing and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Furthermore, to them the king appointed a daily allowance from the delicacies of the king and from his drinking wine, even to nourish them for 3 years, that at the end of these they might stand before the king. Now there happened to be among them some of the sons of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And to them the principal court official went assigning names. So he assigned to Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah Shadrach, and to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel determined in his heart that he would not pollute himself with the delicacies of the king and with his drinking wine, and he kept requesting of the principal court official that he might not pollute himself. Accordingly, the true God gave Daniel over to loving kindness and to mercy before the principal court official. So the principal court official said to Daniel, I am in fear of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. Why then should he see your faces dejected-looking, in comparison with the children who are of the same age as yours? And why should you have to make my head guilty to the king? But Daniel said to the guardian whom the principal court official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Please, put your servants to the test for 10 days, and let them give us some vegetables that we may eat, and water that we may drink. And let our countenances and the countenance of the children who are eating the delicacies of the king appear before you, and according to what you see, do with your servants. Finally he listened to them as regards this matter, and put them to the test for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the children who were eating the delicacies of the king. So the guardian kept on taking away their delicacies and their drinking wine, and giving them vegetables. And as for these children, the 4 of them, to them the true God gave knowledge and insight in all writing and wisdom, and Daniel himself had understanding in all sorts of visions and dreams. And at the end of the days that the king had said to bring them in, the principal court official also proceeded to bring them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king began to speak with them, and out of them all no one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they continued to stand before the king. And as regards every matter of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired about from them, he even got to find them 10 times better than all the magic-practicing priests and the conjurers that were in all his royal realm. And Daniel continued on until the 1st year of Cyrus the king. Chapter 2. And in the 2nd year of the kingship of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, and his spirit began to feel agitated, and his very sleep was made to be something beyond him. So the king said to call the magic-practicing priests, and the conjurers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, to tell the king his dreams. And they proceeded to come in and to stand before the king. Then the king said to them, There is a dream that I have dreamed, and my spirit is agitated to know the dream. At that the Chaldeans spoke to the king in the Aramaic language. O king, live on even for times indefinite. Say what the dream is to your servants, and we shall show the very interpretation. The king was answering and saying to the Chaldeans, The word is being promulgated by me. If you men do not make the dream known to me, and its interpretation, Dismembered is what you will be, and into public privies your own houses will be turned. But if the dream and its interpretation you will show, gifts and a present and much dignity you will receive on my part. Therefore show me the very dream and its interpretation. They answered a second time and were saying, Let the king say what the dream is to his servants, and we shall show its very interpretation. The king was answering and saying, For a fact, I am aware that time is what you men are trying to gain, forasmuch as you have perceived that the word is being promulgated by me. For if you do not make known to me the very dream, this one and only sentence is upon you. But it is a lying and wrong word that you have agreed to say before me, until the time itself is changed. Therefore tell me the very dream, and I shall know that you can show the very interpretation of it. The Chaldeans answered before the king, and they were saying, There does not exist a man on the dry land that is able to show the matter of the king, forasmuch as no grand king or governor has asked such a thing as this of any magic-practicing priest or conjurer or Chaldean. But the thing that the king himself is asking is difficult, and nobody else exists who can show it before the king except the gods, whose own dwelling does not exist with flesh at all. Because of this, the king himself became angry and got very furious, and he said to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the order itself went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they looked for Daniel and his companions, for them to be killed. At that time, Daniel, for his part, addressed himself with counsel and sensibleness to Arioch, the chief of the king's bodyguard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He was answering and saying to Arioch, the officer of the king, For what reason is there such a harsh order on the part of the king? Then it was that Arioch made known the matter itself to Daniel. So Daniel himself went in and asked from the king that he should give him time expressly to show the very interpretation to the king. After that Daniel went to his own house, and to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, he made known the matter, even for them to ask for mercies on the part of the God of heaven concerning this secret, in order that they might not destroy Daniel and his companions with the remainder of the wise men of Babylon. Then it was that to Daniel in a night vision the secret was revealed. Consequently Daniel himself blessed the God of heaven. Daniel was answering and saying, Let the name of God become blessed from time indefinite even to time indefinite, for wisdom and mightiness, for they belong to him. And he is changing times and seasons, removing kings and setting up kings, giving wisdom to the wise ones and knowledge to those knowing discernment. He is revealing the deep things and the concealed things, knowing what is in the darkness, and with him the light does dwell. To you, O God of my forefathers, I am giving praise and commendation, because wisdom and mightiness you have given to me. And now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the very matter of the king. Because of this, Daniel himself went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went, and this is what he said to him. Do not destroy any wise men of Babylon. Take me in before the king, that I may show the interpretation itself to the king. Then it was that Arioch, in a hurry, took Daniel in before the king, and this is what he said to him. I have found an able-bodied man of the exiles of Judah, who can make known the interpretation itself to the king. The king was answering and saying to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you competent enough to make known to me the dream that I beheld, and its interpretation? Daniel was answering before the king and saying, The secret that the king himself is asking, the wise men, the conjurers, the magic-practicing priests, and the astrologers themselves are unable to show to the king. However, there exists a God in the heavens who is a revealer of secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what is to occur in the final part of the days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed. This it is. As for you, O king, on your bed your own thoughts came up as regards what is to occur after this, and the one who is the revealer of secrets has made known to you what is to occur. And as for me, it is not through any wisdom that exists in me, more than in any others alive, that this secret is revealed to me, except to the intent that the interpretation may be made known to the king himself, and that the thoughts of your heart you may know. You, O king, happen to be beholding, and look, a certain immense image. That image, which was large, and the brightness of which was extraordinary, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was dreadful. As regards that image, its head was of good gold, its breasts and its arms were of silver, its belly and its thighs were of copper, its legs were of iron, its feet were partly of iron and partly of molded clay. You kept on looking until a stone was cut out, not by hands, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and of molded clay, and crushed them. At that time the iron, the molded clay, the copper, the silver, and the gold were altogether crushed, and became like the chaff from the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, so that no trace at all was found of them. And as for the stone that struck the image, it became a large mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and its interpretation we shall say before the king. You, O king, the King of kings, you to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the might, and the strength and the dignity, and into whose hand he has given, wherever the sons of mankind are dwelling, the beasts of the field and the winged creatures of the heavens, and whom he has made ruler over all of them, you yourself are the head of gold. And after you there will rise another kingdom inferior to you, and another kingdom, a third one of copper, that will rule over the whole earth. And as for the fourth kingdom, it will prove to be strong, like iron. For as much as iron is crushing and grinding everything else, so, like iron that shatters, it will crush and shatter even all these. And whereas you beheld the feet and the toes to be partly of molded clay of a potter and partly of iron, the kingdom itself will prove to be divided, but somewhat of the hardness of iron will prove to be in it, forasmuch as you beheld the iron mixed with moist clay. And as for the toes of the feet being partly of iron and partly of molded clay, the kingdom will partly prove to be strong, and will partly prove to be fragile. Whereas you beheld iron mixed with moist clay, they will come to be mixed with the offspring of mankind. But they will not prove to be sticking together, this one to that one, just as iron is not mixing with molded clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be brought to ruin, and the kingdom itself will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it itself will stand to times indefinite. Forasmuch as you beheld that out of the mountain a stone was cut, not by hands, and that it crushed the iron, the copper, the molded clay, the silver, and the gold, the grand God himself has made known to the king what is to occur after this. And the dream is reliable, and the interpretation of it is trustworthy. At that time, King Nebuchadnezzar himself fell down upon his face, and to Daniel he paid homage, and he said to offer even a present and incense to him. The king was answering Daniel and saying, Truly the God of you men is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, because you were able to reveal this secret. Consequently the king made Daniel someone great, and many big gifts he gave to him. And he made him the ruler over all the jurisdictional district of Babylon, and the chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel, for his part, made a request of the king, and he appointed over the administration of the jurisdictional district of Babylon Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But Daniel was in the court of the king. Chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits, and the breadth of which was 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the jurisdictional district of Babylon. And Nebuchadnezzar himself as king sent to assemble the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the police magistrates, and all the administrators of the jurisdictional districts to come to the inauguration of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. At that time, the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the police magistrates, and all the administrators of the jurisdictional districts were assembling themselves for the inauguration of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they were standing in front of the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald was crying out loudly, "To you it is being said, O peoples, national groups, and languages, that at the time that you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the zither, the triangular harp, the stringed instrument, the bagpipe, and all sorts of musical instruments, you fall down and worship the image of gold that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship will at the same moment be thrown into the burning fiery furnace." Because of this, at the same time as all the peoples were hearing the sound of the horn, the pipe, the zither, the triangular harp, the stringed instrument, and all sorts of musical instruments, all the peoples, national groups, and languages were falling down and worshipping the image of gold that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Because of this, at that same time, certain Chaldeans approached and accused the Jews. They answered, and they were saying to Nebuchadnezzar the king, "O king, live on even for times indefinite. You yourself, O king, set forth the command that every man that hears the sound of the horn, the pipe, the zither, the triangular harp, the stringed instrument, and the bagpipe, and all sorts of musical instruments, should fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever would not fall down and worship should be thrown into the burning fiery furnace. There exist certain Jews whom you appointed over the administration of the jurisdictional district of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These able-bodied men have paid no regard to you, O king. They are not serving your own gods, and the image of gold that you have set up they are not worshipping." At that time Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage and fury, said to bring in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Consequently, these able-bodied men were brought in before the king. Nebuchadnezzar was answering and saying to them, "Is it really so, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you are not serving my own gods, and the image of gold that I have set up you are not worshipping? Now if you are ready, so that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the zither, the triangular harp, the stringed instrument, and the bagpipe, and all sorts of musical instruments, you fall down and worship the image that I have made, all right. But if you do not worship, at that same moment you will be thrown into the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that can rescue you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered, and they were saying to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we are under no necessity in this regard to say back a word to you. If it is to be, our God whom we are serving is able to rescue us. Out of the burning fiery furnace and out of your hand, O king, he will rescue us. But if not, let it become known to you, O king, that your gods are not the ones we are serving, and the image of gold that you have set up we will not worship." Then it was that Nebuchadnezzar himself got filled with fury, and the very expression of his face was changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He was answering and saying, to heat up the furnace 7 times more than it was customary to heat it up. And to certain able-bodied men of vital energy who were in his military force, he said to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in order to throw them into the burning fiery furnace. Then it was that these able-bodied men were bound in their mantles, their garments, and their caps, and their other clothing, and were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Just because the king's word was harsh, and the furnace was heated to excess, these able-bodied men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the ones that the fiery flame killed. But these other able-bodied men, the 3 of them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. At that time Nebuchadnezzar the king himself became frightened, and he rose up in a hurry. He was answering and saying to his high royal officials, "Was it not 3 able-bodied men that we threw bound into the midst of the fire?" They were answering and saying to the king, "Yes, O king." He was answering and saying, "Look, I am beholding 4 able-bodied men walking about free in the midst of the fire, and there is no hurt to them, and the appearance of the 4th one is resembling a son of the gods." Then it was that Nebuchadnezzar approached the door of the burning fiery furnace. He was answering and saying, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, step out and come here." At that time, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were stepping out from the midst of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, and the high officials of the king that were assembled were beholding these able-bodied men, that the fire had had no power over their bodies, and not a hair of their head had been singed, and even their mantles had not been changed, and the smell of fire itself had not come on to them. Nebuchadnezzar was answering and saying, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants that trusted in him, and that changed the very word of the king, and gave over their bodies, because they would not serve and would not worship any god at all, except their own God. And from me an order is being put through that any people, national group, or language that says anything wrong against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego should be dismembered, and its house should be turned into a public privy, forasmuch as there does not exist another God that is able to deliver like this one." At that time the king himself caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the jurisdictional district of Babylon. Chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar, the king, to all the peoples, national groups, and languages that are dwelling in all the earth, may your peace grow great. The signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed with me, it has seemed good to me to declare. How grand his signs are, and how mighty his wonders are. His kingdom is a kingdom to time indefinite, and his rulership is for generation after generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, happened to be at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. There was a dream that I beheld, and it began to make me afraid. And there were mental images upon my bed, and visions of my head that began to frighten me. And from me an order was being put through to bring in before me all the wise men of Babylon, that they might make known to me the very interpretation of the dream. At that time the magic-practicing priests, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers were entering, and I was saying before them what the dream was, but its interpretation they were not making known to me. And at last there came in before me Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom there is the spirit of the holy gods. And before him I said what the dream was. O Belteshazzar, the chief of the magic-practicing priests, because I myself well know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that there is no secret at all that is troubling you, tell me the visions of my dream that I have beheld and its interpretation. Now the visions of my head upon my bed I happened to be beholding, and look, a tree in the midst of the earth, the height of which was immense. The tree grew up and became strong, and its very height finally reached the heavens, and it was visible to the extremity of the whole earth. Its foliage was fair, and its fruit was abundant, and there was food for all on it. Under it the beast of the field would seek shade, and on its boughs the birds of the heavens would dwell, and from it all flesh would feed itself. I continued beholding in the visions of my head upon my bed, and look, a watcher, even a holy one, coming down from the heavens themselves. He was calling out loudly, and this is what he was saying: "Chop the tree down, and cut off its boughs. Shake off its foliage, and scatter its fruitage. Let the beast flee from under it, and the birds from its boughs. However, leave its rootstock itself in the earth, even with a banding of iron and of copper, among the grass of the field. And with the dew of the heavens let it be wet, and with the beast let its portion be among the vegetation of the earth. Let its heart be changed from that of mankind, and let the heart of a beast be given to it, and let 7 times pass over it. By the decree of watchers the thing is, and by the saying of holy ones the request is, to the intent that people living may know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that to the one whom he wants to, he gives it, and he sets up over it even the lowliest one of mankind." This was the dream that I myself, King Nebuchadnezzar, beheld. And you yourself, O Belteshazzar, say what the interpretation is, forasmuch as all the other wise men of my kingdom are unable to make known to me the interpretation itself. But you are competent, because the spirit of holy gods is in you. At that time Daniel himself, whose name is Belteshazzar, was astonished for a moment, and his very thoughts began to frighten him. The king was answering and saying, "O Belteshazzar, do not let the dream and the interpretation themselves frighten you." Belteshazzar was answering and saying, "O my lord, may the dream apply to those hating you, and its interpretation to your adversaries. The tree that you beheld, that grew great and became strong, and the height of which finally reached the heavens, and which was visible to all the earth, and the foliage of which was fair, and the fruit of which was abundant, and on which there was food for all, under which the beasts of the field would dwell, and on the boughs of which the birds of the heavens would reside. It is you, O king, because you have grown great and become strong, and your grandeur has grown great and reached to the heavens, and your rulership to the extremity of the earth. And because the king beheld a watcher, even a holy one coming down from the heavens, who was also saying, 'Chop the tree down and ruin it. However, leave its rootstock itself in the earth, but with a banding of iron and of copper, among the grass of the field, and with the dew of the heavens let it become wet, and with the beasts of the field let its portion be, until 7 times themselves pass over it. This is the interpretation, O king, and the decree of the Most High is that which must befall my lord the king. And you they will be driving away from men, and with the beasts of the field your dwelling will come to be. And the vegetation is what they will give, even to you to eat, just like bulls. And with the dew of the heavens you yourself will be getting wet. And 7 times themselves will pass over you, until you know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that to the one whom he wants to, he gives it. And because they said to leave the rootstock of the tree, your kingdom will be sure to you after you know that the heavens are ruling. Therefore, O king, may my counsel seem good to you, and remove your own sins by righteousness, and your iniquity by showing mercy to the poor ones. Maybe there will occur a lengthening of your prosperity." All this befell Nebuchadnezzar the king. At the end of 12 lunar months, he happened to be walking upon the royal palace of Babylon. The king was answering and saying, "Is not this Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house, with the strength of my might, and for the dignity of my majesty?" While the word was yet in the king's mouth, there was a voice that fell from the heavens. "To you it is being said, O Nebuchadnezzar the king, the kingdom itself has gone away from you, and from mankind they are driving even you away, and with the beasts of the field your dwelling will be. Vegetation they will give even to you to eat just like bulls, and 7 times themselves will pass over you, until you know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that to the one whom he wants to, he gives it." At that moment the word itself was fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and from mankind he was being driven away, and vegetation he began to eat just like bulls, and with the dew of the heavens his own body got to be wet, until his very hair grew long just like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up to the heavens my eyes, and my own understanding began to return to me. And I blessed the Most High himself, and the one living to time indefinite I praised and glorified, because his rulership is a rulership to time indefinite, and his kingdom is for generation after generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are being considered as merely nothing, and he is doing according to his own will among the army of the heavens and the inhabitants of the earth. And there exists no one that can check his hand, or that can say to him, "What have you been doing?" At the same time my understanding itself began to return to me, and for the dignity of my kingdom, my majesty and my brightness themselves began to return to me, and for me even my high royal officers and my grandees began eagerly searching, and I was re-established upon my own kingdom, and greatness extraordinary was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, am praising and exalting, and glorifying the King of the heavens, because all his works are truth, and his ways are justice, and because those who are walking in pride he is able to humiliate. Chapter 5. As regards Belshazzar the king, he made a big feast for 1,000 of his grandees, and in front of the 1,000 he was drinking wine. Belshazzar, under the influence of the wine, said to bring in the vessels of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken away from the temple that was in Jerusalem, that from them the king and his grandees, his concubines, and his secondary wives might drink. At that time they brought in the vessels of gold that they had taken away from the temple of the house of God that was in Jerusalem, and from them the king and his grandees, his concubines, and his secondary wives drank. They drank wine, and they praised the gods of gold and of silver, copper, iron, wood, and stone. At that moment the fingers of a man's hand came forth, and were writing in front of the lampstand upon the plaster of the wall of the palace of the king, and the king was beholding the back of the hand that was writing. At that time, as regards the king, his very complexion was changed in him, and his own thoughts began to frighten him, and his hip joints were loosening, and his very knees were knocking each other. The king was calling out loudly to bring in the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king was answering and saying to the wise men of Babylon, "Any man that will read this writing and show me its very interpretation, with purple he will be clothed, with a necklace of gold about his neck, and as the 3rd one in the kingdom he will rule." At that time all the wise men of the king were coming in, but they were not competent enough to read the writing itself, or to make known to the king the interpretation. Consequently, King Belshazzar was very much frightened, and his complexion was changing within him, and his grandees were perplexed. As regards the queen, because of the words of the king and his grandees, she entered right into the banqueting hall. The queen answered and said, "O king, keep living even to times indefinite. Do not let your thoughts frighten you, nor let your complexion be changed. There exists a capable man in your kingdom in whom there is the spirit of holy gods, and in the days of your father illumination and insight and wisdom, like the wisdom of gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar your father himself set him up as chief of the magic-practicing priests, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers, even your father, O king. Forasmuch as an extraordinary spirit and knowledge and insight to interpret dreams, and the explanation of riddles, and the untying of knots had been found in him, in Daniel, whom the king himself named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel himself be called, that he may show the very interpretation." Accordingly, Daniel himself was brought in before the king. The king was speaking up and saying to Daniel, "Are you the Daniel that is of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Judah? I have also heard concerning you that the Spirit of God is in you, and illumination and insight and wisdom extraordinary have been found in you. And now there have been brought in before me the wise men and the conjurers, that they may read this very writing, even to make known to me its interpretation. But they are not competent enough to show the very interpretation of the word. And I myself have heard concerning you, that you are able to furnish interpretations and to untie knots themselves. Now, if you are able to read the writing and to make known to me its very interpretation, with purple you will be clothed, with a necklace of gold around your neck, and as the third one in the kingdom you will rule." At that time Daniel was answering and saying before the king, "Let your gifts prove to be to you yourself, and your presents do you give to others. However, I shall read the writing itself to the king, and the interpretation I shall make known to him. As for you, O king, the Most High God himself gave to Nebuchadnezzar your father the kingdom and the greatness and the dignity and the majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, national groups, and languages proved to be quaking and showing fear before him. Whom he happened to want to, he was killing, and whom he happened to want to, he was striking, and whom he happened to want to, he was exalting, and whom he happened to want to, he was humiliating. But when his heart became haughty, and his own spirit became hard, so as to act presumptuously, he was brought down from the throne of his kingdom, and his own dignity was taken away from him. And from the sons of mankind he was driven away, and his very heart was made like that of a beast, and with the wild asses his dwelling was. Vegetation they would give him to eat, just like bulls, and with the dew of the heavens his own body got to be wet, until he knew that the Most High God is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that the one whom he wants to, he sets up over it. And as for you, his son Belshazzar, you have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this. But against the Lord of the heavens you exalted yourself, and they brought before you even the vessels of his house, and you yourself, and your grandees, your concubines, and your secondary wives have been drinking wine from them, and you have praised mere gods of silver and of gold, copper, iron, wood and stone, that are beholding nothing, or hearing nothing, or knowing nothing, but the God in whose hand your breath is, and to whom all your ways belong, you have not glorified. Consequently, from before him there was being sent the back of a hand, and this very writing was inscribed, and this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. This is the interpretation of the word. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and has finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and have been found deficient. Peres, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. At that time Belshazzar commanded, and they clothed Daniel with purple, with a necklace of gold about his neck, and they heralded concerning him that he was to become the third ruler in the kingdom. In that very night Belshazzar the Chaldean king was killed, and Darius the Mede himself received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Chapter 6. It seemed good to Darius, and he set up over the kingdom 120 satraps who were to be over the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, in order that these satraps might continually be giving to them the report, and the king himself might not become the loser. Then it was that this Daniel was steadily distinguishing himself over the high officials and the satraps, for as much as an extraordinary spirit was in him, and the king was intending to elevate him over all the kingdom. At that time the high officials and the satraps themselves were constantly seeking to find some pretext against Daniel respecting the kingdom, but there was no pretext or corrupt thing at all that they were able to find, forasmuch as he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corrupt thing at all was found in him. Consequently, these able-bodied men were saying, "We shall find in this Daniel no pretext at all, except we have to find it against him in the law of his God." Accordingly, these high officials and satraps themselves entered as a throng to the king, and this is what they were saying to him. "O Darius the king, live on even for times indefinite. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the high royal officers and the governors, have taken counsel together to establish a royal statute and to enforce an interdict, that whoever makes a petition to any god or man for 30 days except to you, O king, should be thrown to the lion's pit. Now, O king, may you establish the statute and sign the writing in order for it not to be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which is not annulled." In accord with this, King Darius himself signed the writing and the interdict. But Daniel, as soon as he knew that the writing had been signed, entered into his house, and the windows in his roof chamber being opened for him toward Jerusalem, even 3 times in a day, he was kneeling on his knees and praying and offering praise before his God, as he had been regularly doing prior to this. At that time, these able-bodied men themselves crowded in and found Daniel petitioning and imploring favor before his God. Then it was that they approached and were saying before the king concerning the interdict of the king, "Is there not an interdict that you have signed, that any man that asks a petition from any god or man for 30 days, except from you, O king, he should be thrown to the lion's pit?" The king was answering and saying, "The matter is well established according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which is not annulled." Immediately they answered, and they were saying before the king, "Daniel, who is of the exiles of Judah, has paid no regard to you, O king, nor to the interdict that you signed, but 3 times in a day he is making his petition." Consequently, the king, as soon as he heard the word, it was very displeasing to him, and toward Daniel he set his mind in order to rescue him. Until the setting of the sun he kept on striving to deliver him. Finally, these able-bodied men themselves entered as a throng to the king, and they were saying to the king, "Take note, O king, that the law belonging to the Medes and the Persians is that any interdict or statute that the king himself establishes is not to be changed." Accordingly, the king himself commanded, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the pit of the lions. The king was answering and saying to Daniel, "Your God whom you are serving with constancy, he himself will rescue you." And a stone was brought and placed on the mouth of the pit, and the king sealed it with his signet ring, and with the signet ring of his grandees, in order that nothing should be changed in the case of Daniel. At that time the king went to his palace, and spent the night fasting, and no musical instruments were brought in before him, and his very sleep fled from him. Finally the king himself, at dawn, proceeded to get up in the daylight, and in a hurry he went right to the lion's pit. And as he got near to the pit, he cried out with a sad voice even to Daniel. The king was speaking up and saying to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you are serving with constancy been able to rescue you from the lions?" Immediately Daniel himself spoke even with the king. "O king, live on even to times indefinite. My own God sent his angel and shut the mouth of the lions, and they have not brought me to ruin, forasmuch as before him innocence itself was found in me, and also before you, O king, no hurtful act have I done." Then it was that the king himself became very glad, and Daniel himself he commanded to be lifted up out of the pit. And Daniel was lifted up out of the pit, and there was no hurt at all found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and they brought these able-bodied men who had accused Daniel, and into the lion's pit they threw them, their sons and their wives. And they had not reached the bottom of the pit before the lions had got the mastery over them, and all their bones they crushed. Then it was that Darius the king himself wrote to all the peoples, the national groups, and the tongues that are dwelling in all the earth, May your peace grow very much. From before me there has been put through an order that in every dominion of my kingdom people are to be quaking and fearing before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and one enduring to times indefinite, and his kingdom is one that will not be brought to ruin, and his dominion is forever. He is rescuing and delivering, and performing signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth, for he has rescued Daniel from the paw of the lions. And as for this Daniel, he prospered in the kingdom of Darius and in the kingdom of Cyrus the Persian. Chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel himself beheld a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. At that time he wrote down the dream itself, the complete account of the matters he told. Daniel was speaking up and saying, I happened to be beholding in my visions during the night, and see there, the four winds of the heavens were stirring up the vast sea. And four huge beasts were coming up out of the sea, each one being different from the others. The first one was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I kept on beholding until its wings were plucked out, and it was lifted up from the earth and was made to stand up on 2 feet, just like a man, and there was given to it the heart of a man. And see there, another beast, a second one, it being like a bear, and on one side it was raised up, and there were 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and this is what they were saying to it, Get up, eat much flesh. After this I kept on beholding, and see there, another beast, one like a leopard, but it had 4 wings of a flying creature on its back, and the beast had 4 heads, and there was given to it rulership indeed. After this I kept on beholding in the visions of the night, and see there, a 4th beast, fearsome and terrible and unusually strong, and it had teeth of iron, big ones. It was devouring and crushing, and what was left it was treading down with its feet. And it was something different from all the other beasts that were prior to it, and it had 10 horns. I kept on considering the horns, and look, another horn, a small one, came up in among them, and there were 3 of the first horns that were plucked up from before it. And look, there were eyes like the eyes of a man in this horn, and there was a mouth speaking grandiose things. I kept on beholding until there were thrones placed, and the Ancient of Days sat down. His clothing was white, just like snow, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. His throne was flames of fire. Its wheels were a burning fire. There was a stream of fire flowing and going out from before him. There were 1,000 thousands that kept ministering to him, and 10,000 times 10,000 that kept standing right before him. The court took its seat, and there were books that were opened. I kept on beholding at that time, because of the sound of the grandiose words that the horn was speaking. I kept on beholding until the beast was killed, and its body was destroyed, and it was given to the burning fire. But as for the rest of the beasts, their rulerships were taken away, and there was a lengthening in life given to them for a time and a season. I kept on beholding in the visions of the night, and see there, with the clouds of the heavens, someone like a son of man happened to be coming, and to the Ancient of Days he gained access, and they brought him up close even before that one. And to him there were given rulership and dignity and kingdom, that the peoples, national groups, and languages should all serve even him. His rulership is an indefinitely lasting rulership that will not pass away, and his kingdom one that will not be brought to ruin. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within on account of it, and the very visions of my head began to frighten me. I went up close to one of those who were standing, that I might request from him reliable information on all this. And he said to me as he went on to make known to me the very interpretation of the matters, As for these huge beasts, because they are 4, there are 4 kings that will stand up from the earth. but the holy ones of the Supreme One will receive the kingdom, and they will take possession of the kingdom for time indefinite, even for time indefinite upon times indefinite. Then it was that I desired to make certain concerning the fourth beast, which proved to be different from all the others, extraordinarily fearsome, the teeth of which were of iron, and the claws of which were of copper, which was devouring and crushing, and which was treading down even what was left with its feet. And concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 fell, even that horn that had eyes and a mouth, speaking grandiose things, and the appearance of which was bigger than that of its fellows. I kept on beholding when that very horn made war upon the holy ones, and it was prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment itself was given in favor of the holy ones of the Supreme One, and the definite time arrived that the holy ones took possession of the kingdom itself. This is what he said. As for the fourth beast, there is a fourth kingdom that will come to be on the earth, that will be different from all the other kingdoms, and it will devour all the earth, and will trample it down and crush it. And as for the 10 horns, out of that kingdom there are 10 kings that will rise up, and still another one will rise up after them, and he himself will be different from the first ones, and 3 kings he will humiliate. And he will speak even words against the Most High, and he will harass continually the holy ones themselves of the Supreme One. And he will intend to change times and law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, and times and half a time. And the court itself proceeded to sit, and his own rulership they finally took away, in order to annihilate him, and to destroy him totally. And the kingdom and the rulership and the grandeur of the kingdoms under all the heavens were given to the people who are the holy ones of the Supreme One. Their kingdom is an indefinitely lasting kingdom, and all the rulerships will serve and obey even them. Up to this point is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my own thoughts kept frightening me a great deal, so that my very complexion changed in me, but the matter itself I kept in my own heart. Chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the kingship of Belshazzar the king, there was a vision that appeared to me, even me, Daniel, after the one appearing to me at the start. And I began to see in the vision, and it came about, while I was seeing, that I was in Shushan the castle, which is in Elam, the jurisdictional district. And I proceeded to see in the vision, and I myself happened to be by the watercourse of Ulai. When I raised my eyes, then I saw, and look, a ram standing before the watercourse, and it had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were tall, but the one was taller than the other, and the taller was the one that came up afterward. I saw the ram making thrusts to the west and to the north and to the south, and no wild beasts kept standing before it, and there was no one doing any delivering out of its hand, and it did according to its will, and it put on great airs. And I, for my part, kept on considering, and look, there was a male of the goats coming from the sunset upon the surface of the whole earth, and it was not touching the earth. And as regards the he-goat, there was a conspicuous horn between its eyes. And it kept coming all the way to the ram possessing the 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the watercourse, and it came running toward it in its powerful rage. And I saw it coming into close touch with the ram, and it began showing bitterness toward it, and it proceeded to strike down the ram and to break its 2 horns, and there proved to be no power in the ram to stand before it. So it threw it to the earth, and trampled it down, and the ram proved to have no deliverer out of its hand. And the male of the goats, for its part, put on great airs to an extreme. But as soon as it became mighty, the great horn was broken, and there proceeded to come up conspicuously 4 instead of it, toward the 4 winds of the heavens. And out of one of them there came forth another horn, a small one, and it kept getting very much greater toward the south, and toward the sun rising, and toward the decoration. And it kept getting greater all the way to the army of the heavens, so that it caused some of the army and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and it went trampling them down. And all the way to the prince of the army it put on great airs, and from him the constant feature was taken away, and the established place of his sanctuary was thrown down. And an army itself was gradually given over, together with the constant feature, because of transgression, and it kept throwing truth to the earth, and it acted and had success. And I got to hear certain holy ones speaking, and another holy one proceeded to say to the particular one who was speaking, "How long will the vision be of the constant feature, and of the transgression causing desolation, to make both the holy place and the army things to trample on?" So he said to me, "Until 2,300 evenings and mornings, and the holy place will certainly be brought into its right condition." Then it came about that while I myself, Daniel, was seeing the vision, and seeking an understanding, why, look, there was standing in front of me someone in appearance like an able-bodied man, and I began to hear the voice of an earthling man in the midst of the uli, and he proceeded to call out and say, "Gabriel, make that one there understand the thing seen." So he came beside where I was standing, but when he came I got terrified so that I fell upon my face. And he proceeded to say to me, "Understand, O Son of Man, that the vision is for the time of the end." And while he was speaking with me, I had become fast asleep on my face on the earth. So he touched me and made me stand up where I had been standing. And he went on to say, "Here I am causing you to know what will occur in the final part of the denunciation, because it is for the appointed time of the end. The ram that you saw possessing the 2 horns stands for the kings of Media and Persia, and the hairy he-goat stands for the king of Greece. And as for the great horn that was between its eyes, it stands for the first king. And that one having been broken, so that there were 4 that finally stood up instead of it, there are 4 kingdoms from his nation that will stand up, but not with his power. And in the final part of their kingdom, as the transgressors act to a completion, there will stand up a king fierce in countenance, and understanding ambiguous sayings, and his power must become mighty, but not by his own power. And in a wonderful way he will cause ruin, and he will certainly prove successful and do effectively, and he will actually bring mighty ones to ruin, also the people made up of the holy ones. And according to his insight, he will also certainly cause deception to succeed in his hand, and in his heart he will put on great airs, and during a freedom from care he will bring many to ruin. And against the prince of princes he will stand up, but it will be without hand that he will be broken. And the thing seen concerning the evening and the morning, which has been said, it is true. And you, for your part, keep secret the vision, because it is yet for many days. And as for me, Daniel, I felt exhausted, and was made sick for some days. Then I got up and did the work of the king. But I kept showing myself numbed on account of the thing seen, and there was nobody understanding it. Chapter 9. In the 1st year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, who had been made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans, in the 1st year of his reigning, I myself, Daniel, discerned by the books the number of the years concerning which the word of Jehovah had occurred to Jeremiah the prophet, for fulfilling the devastations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. And I proceeded to set my face to Jehovah the true God, in order to seek him with prayer and with entreaties, with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I began to pray to Jehovah my God, and to make confession, and to say, Ah, Jehovah, the true God, the great one, and the fear-inspiring one, keeping the covenant and the loving kindness to those loving him, and to those keeping his commandments, we have sinned and done wrong, and acted wickedly and rebelled. And there has been a turning aside from your commandments and from your judicial decisions. And we have not listened to your servants the prophets, who have spoken in your name to our kings, our princes, and our forefathers, and to all the people of the land. To you, O Jehovah, there belongs the righteousness, but to us the shame of face as at this day, to the men of Judah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to all those of Israel, those near by and those far away, in all the lands to which you dispersed them, because of their unfaithfulness with which they acted against you. O Jehovah, to us belongs the shame of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our forefathers, because we have sinned against you. To Jehovah our God belong the mercies and the acts of forgiveness, for we have rebelled against him. And we have not obeyed the voice of Jehovah our God, by walking in his laws that he set before us by the hand of his servants, the prophets. And all those of Israel have overstepped your law, and there has been a turning aside by not obeying your voice, so that you poured out upon us the curse, and the sworn oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of the true God, for we have sinned against him. And he proceeded to carry out his words that he had spoken against us, and against our judges who judged us, by bringing upon us great calamity, such as was not done under the whole heavens, as what has been done in Jerusalem. Just as it is written in the law of Moses, all this calamity, it has come upon us, and we have not softened the face of Jehovah our God, by turning back from our error, and by showing insight into your trueness. And Jehovah kept alert to the calamity, and finally brought it upon us. For Jehovah our God is righteous in all his works that he has done, and we have not obeyed his voice. And now, O Jehovah our God, you who brought your people out from the land of Egypt by a strong hand, and proceeded to make a name for yourself as at this day, we have sinned, we have acted wickedly. O Jehovah, according to all your acts of righteousness, please, may your anger and your rage turn back from your city Jerusalem, your holy mountain. For because of our sins and because of the errors of our forefathers, Jerusalem and your people are an object of reproach to all those round about us. And now listen, O our God, to the prayer of your servant, and to his entreaties, and cause your face to shine upon your sanctuary that is desolated, for the sake of Jehovah. Incline your ear, O my God, and hear. Do open your eyes and see our desolated conditions, and the city that has been called by your name. For not according to our righteous acts are we letting our entreaties fall before you, but according to your many mercies. O Jehovah, do hear. O Jehovah, do forgive. O Jehovah, do pay attention and act. Do not delay, for your own sake, O my God, for your own name has been called upon your city and upon your people. While I was yet speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and letting my request for favor fall before Jehovah my God concerning the holy mountain of my God, and while I was yet speaking in the prayer, why, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the start, having been made weary with tiredness, was arriving by me at the time of the evening gift offering, and he proceeded to impart understanding and speak with me and say, O Daniel, now I have come forth to make you have insight with understanding. At the start of your entreaties a word went forth, and I myself have come to make report, because you are someone very desirable. So give consideration to the matter, and have understanding in the things seen. There are 70 weeks that have been determined upon your people and upon your holy city, in order to terminate the transgression, and to finish off sin, and to make atonement for error, and to bring in righteousness for times indefinite, and to imprint a seal upon vision and prophet, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. And you should know and have the insight that from the going forth of the word to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the leader, there will be 7 weeks, also 62 weeks. She will return and be actually rebuilt, with a public square and moat, but in the straits of the times. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off, with nothing for himself. And the city and the holy place, the people of a leader that is coming, will bring to their ruin. And the end of it will be by the flood. And until the end there will be war. What is decided upon is desolations. And he must keep the covenant in force for the many for 1 week. And at the half of the week he will cause sacrifice and gift offering to cease. And upon the wing of disgusting things there will be the one causing desolation, and until an extermination, the very thing decided upon will go pouring out, also upon the one lying desolate. Chapter 10. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, there was a matter revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. And the matter was true, and there was a great military service. And he understood the matter, and he had understanding in the things seen. In those days, I myself, Daniel, happened to be mourning for 3 full weeks. Dainty bread I did not eat, and no flesh or wine entered into my mouth, and in no way did I grease myself until the completing of the 3 full weeks. And on the 24th day of the 1st month, while I myself happened to be on the bank of the great river, that is, Hiddekel, I also proceeded to raise my eyes and see. And here was a certain man clothed in linen, with his hips girded with gold of Uphaz. And his body was like chrysolite, and his face like the appearance of lightning, and his eyes like fiery torches, and his arms and the place of his feet were like the sight of burnished copper, and the sound of his words was like the sound of a crowd. And I saw, I Daniel by myself, the appearance. But as for the men that happened to be with me, they did not see the appearance. However, there was a great trembling that fell upon them, so that they went running away and hiding themselves. And I was left remaining by myself, so that I saw this great appearance. And there was left remaining in me no power, and my own dignity became changed upon me to ruination, and I retained no power. And I began hearing the sound of his words, and while I was hearing the sound of his words, I myself also happened to be fast asleep upon my face, with my face to the earth. And look, there was a hand that touched me, and it gradually stirred me up to get upon my knees in the palms of my hands. And he proceeded to say to me, O Daniel, you very desirable man, have understanding in the words that I am speaking to you, and stand up where you were standing, for now I have been sent to you. And when he spoke with me this word, I did stand up shivering. And he went on to say to me, Do not be afraid, O Daniel, for from the first day that you gave your heart to understanding, and humbling yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I myself have come because of your words. But the prince of the royal realm of Persia was standing in opposition to me for 21 days. And look, Michael, one of the foremost princes, came to help me, and I for my part remained there beside the kings of Persia. And I have come to cause you to discern what will befall your people in the final part of the days, because it is a vision yet for the days to come. Now when he spoke with me words like these, I had set my face to the earth and had become speechless. And look, one similar to the likeness of the sons of mankind was touching my lips, and I began to open my mouth and speak and say to the one who was standing in front of me, O my Lord, because of the appearance my convulsions were turned within me, and I did not retain any power. So how was the servant of this my Lord able to speak with this my Lord? And as for me, up to now there kept standing in me no power, and no breath at all was left remaining in me. And the one, like the appearance of an earthling man, proceeded to touch me again and strengthen me. Then he said, Do not be afraid, O very desirable man. May you have peace. Be strong. Yes, be strong. And as soon as he spoke with me, I exerted my strength and finally said, Let my Lord speak, because you have strengthened me. So he went on to say, Do you really know why I have come to you? And now I shall go back to fight with the Prince of Persia. When I am going forth, look, also the Prince of Greece is coming. However, I shall tell you the things noted down in the writing of truth, and there is no one holding strongly with me in these things, but Michael, the prince of you people. Chapter 11. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up as a strengthener and as a fortress to him. And now what is truth I shall tell to you. Look, there will yet be 3 kings standing up for Persia, and the 4th one will amass greater riches than all others. And as soon as he has become strong in his riches, he will rouse up everything against the kingdom of Greece. And a mighty king will certainly stand up and rule with extensive dominion, and do according to his will. And when he will have stood up, his kingdom will be broken, and be divided toward the 4 winds of the heavens, but not to his posterity, and not according to his dominion with which he had ruled, because his kingdom will be uprooted, even for others than these. And the king of the south will become strong, even one of his princes, and he will prevail against him, and will certainly rule with extensive dominion, greater than that one's ruling power. And at the end of some years they will ally themselves with each other, and the very daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north in order to make an equitable arrangement. But she will not retain the power of her arm, and he will not stand, neither his arm. And she will be given up, she herself, and those bringing her in, and he who caused her birth, and the one making her strong in those times. And one from the sprout of her roots will certainly stand up in his position, and he will come to the military force, and come against the fortress of the king of the north, and will certainly act against them, and prevail. And also with their gods, with their molten images, with their desirable articles of silver and of gold, and with the captives he will come to Egypt. And he himself will for some years stand off from the king of the north. And he will actually come into the kingdom of the king of the south, and go back to his own soil. Now as for his sons, they will excite themselves, and actually gather together a crowd of large military forces, and in coming he will certainly come and flood over and pass through. But he will go back, and he will excite himself all the way to his fortress. And the king of the south will embitter himself, and will have to go forth and fight with him, that is, with the king of the north. And he will certainly have a large crowd stand up, and the crowd will actually be given into the hand of that one, and the crowd will certainly be carried away. His heart will become exalted, and he will actually cause tens of thousands to fall. But he will not use his strong position. And the king of the north must return, and set up a crowd larger than the first. And at the end of the times, some years, he will come, doing so with a great military force, and with a great deal of goods. And in those times there will be many who will stand up against the king of the south. And the sons of the robbers belonging to your people will, for their part, be carried along to try making a vision come true, and they will have to stumble. And the king of the north will come and throw up a siege rampart, and actually capture a city with fortifications. And as for the arms of the south, they will not stand, neither the people of his picked ones, and there will be no power to keep standing. And the one coming against him will do according to his will, and there will be no one standing before him. And he will stand in the land of the decoration, and there will be extermination in his hand. And he will set his face to come with the forcefulness of his entire kingdom, and there will be equitable terms with him, and he will act effectively. And as regards the daughter of womankind, it will be granted to him to bring her to ruin, and she will not stand, and she will not continue to be his. And he will turn his face back to the coastlands, and will actually capture many, and a commander will have to make the reproach from him cease for himself, so that his reproach will not be. He will make it turn back upon that one. And he will turn his face back to the fortresses of his own land, and he will certainly stumble and fall, and he will not be found. And there must stand up in his position one who is causing an exactor to pass through the splendid kingdom, and in a few days he will be broken, but not in anger, nor in warfare. And there must stand up in his position one who is to be despised, and they will certainly not set upon him the dignity of the kingdom. And he will actually come in during a freedom from care, and take hold of the kingdom by means of smoothness. And as regards the arms of the flood, they will be flooded over on account of him, and they will be broken, as will also the leader of the covenant. And because of their allying themselves with him, he will carry on deception, and actually come up and become mighty by means of a little nation. During freedom from care, even into the fatness of the jurisdictional district he will enter in, and actually do what his fathers and the fathers of his fathers have not done. Plunder and spoil and goods he will scatter among them, and against fortified places he will scheme out his schemes, but only until a time. And he will arouse his power and his heart against the king of the south with a great military force, and the king of the south, for his part, will excite himself for the war with an exceedingly great and mighty military force. And he will not stand, because they will scheme out against him schemes, and the very ones eating his delicacies will bring his breakdown. And as for his military force, it will be flooded away, and many will certainly fall down slain. And as regards these two kings, their heart will be inclined to doing what is bad, and at one table a lie is what they will keep speaking, but nothing will succeed, because the end is yet for the time appointed. And he will go back to his land with a great amount of goods, and his heart will be against the holy covenant, and he will act effectively and certainly go back to his land. At the time appointed he will go back, and he will actually come against the south, but it will not prove to be at the last the same as at the first. And there will certainly come against him the ships of Kittim, and he will have to become dejected. And he will actually go back and hurl denunciations against the Holy Covenant and act effectively. And he will have to go back and will give consideration to those leaving the Holy Covenant. And there will be arms that will stand up, proceeding from him, and they will actually profane the sanctuary, the fortress, and remove the constant feature. And they will certainly put in place the disgusting thing that is causing desolation. And those who are acting wickedly against the covenant, he will lead into apostasy by means of smooth words. But as regards the people who are knowing their God, they will prevail and act effectively. And as regards those having insight among the people, they will impart understanding to the many, and they will certainly be made to stumble by sword and by flame, by captivity and by plundering for some days. But when they are made to stumble, they will be helped with a little help, and many will certainly join themselves to them by means of smoothness, and some of those having insight will be made to stumble, in order to do a refining work because of them, and to do a cleansing, and to do a whitening, until the time of the end, because it is yet for the time appointed. And the king will actually do according to his own will, and he will exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. And against the God of gods he will speak marvelous things, and he will certainly prove successful until the denunciation will have come to a finish, because the thing decided upon must be done. And to the God of his fathers he will give no consideration, and to the desire of women and to every other god he will give no consideration, but over every one he will magnify himself. But to the God of fortresses in his position he will give glory, and to a God that his fathers did not know he will give glory by means of gold, and by means of silver, and by means of precious stone, and by means of desirable things. And he will act effectively against the most fortified strongholds, along with a foreign god. Whoever has given him recognition, he will make abound with glory, and he will actually make them rule among many, and the ground he will apportion out for a price. And in the time of the end, the king of the south will engage with him in a pushing, and against him the king of the north will storm with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he will certainly enter into the lands and flood over and pass through. He will also actually enter into the land of the decoration, and there will be many lands that will be made to stumble, But these are the ones that will escape out of his hand, Edom and Moab, and the main part of the sons of Ammon. And he will keep thrusting out his hand against the lands, and as regards the land of Egypt, she will not prove to be an escapee. And he will actually rule over the hidden treasures of the gold and the silver, and over all the desirable things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Ethiopians will be at his steps. But there will be reports that will disturb him, out of the sun rising and out of the north. And he will certainly go forth in a great rage, in order to annihilate and to devote many to destruction. And he will plant his palatial tents between the grand sea and the holy mountain of decoration. And he will have to come all the way to his end, and there will be no helper for him. Chapter 12. And during that time Michael will stand up, the great prince who is standing in behalf of the sons of your people. And there will certainly occur a time of distress, such as has not been made to occur since there came to be a nation, until that time. And during that time your people will escape, every one who is found written down in the book. And there will be many of those asleep in the ground of dust who will wake up, these to indefinitely lasting life, and those to reproaches and to indefinitely lasting abhorrence. And the ones having insight will shine like the brightness of the expanse, and those who are bringing the many to righteousness like the stars to time indefinite, even forever. And as for you, O Daniel, make secret the words and seal up the book until the time of the end. Many will rove about, and the true knowledge will become abundant. And I saw, I Daniel, and look, there were two others standing, one on the bank here of the stream, and the other on the bank there of the stream. Then one said to the man clothed with the linen, who was up above the waters of the stream, How long will it be to the end of the wonderful things? And I began to hear the man clothed with the linen, who was up above the waters of the stream, as he proceeded to raise his right hand and his left hand to the heavens, and to swear by the one who is alive for time indefinite. It will be for an appointed time, appointed times and a half. And as soon as there will have been a finishing of the dashing of the power of the holy people to pieces, all these things will come to their finish. Now as for me, I heard, but I could not understand, so that I said, O my Lord, what will be the final part of these things? And he went on to say, Go, Daniel, because the words are made secret and sealed up until the time of the end. Many will cleanse themselves and whiten themselves and will be refined. And the wicked ones will certainly act wickedly, and no wicked ones at all will understand. But the ones having insight will understand. And from the time that the constant feature has been removed, and there has been a placing of the disgusting thing that is causing desolation, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who is keeping an expectation, and who arrives at the 1,335 days. And as for you yourself, go toward the end, and you will rest, but you will stand up for your lot at the end of the days.